Hello, everybody. Welcome to Community Conversations. My name is Courtney Shaw. I'm the facilitator of the series. We have a couple more events coming up. Next week, we have Sue Orchard, who's going to talk about improv. So please join us again next week for that. If you want more information, check out our website, lowercolumbia.edu/conversations, or you can check out the flyers in the back. They will give you the rest of our schedule. And now I'm going to do the world's quickest introduction because he's going to do more introductions. So I would like to welcome Alex Brem.
Hey everybody, I'm Alex. Thanks, Courtney. And thank you everybody for coming out to this. I know middle of the day on a Thursday, there's a lot competing for your attention. Some people are skipping things, hopefully not classes, to be here. So seriously, thank you for spending your time with us during this lunch hour on this Thursday when perhaps there are other things that might also feel worth your time. I want to talk a bunch more about what we're going to see today and the team that you're going to see today. But before we do that, the first order of business is I want to ask y'all to vote. We're going to do a debate. This is a debate. And in order to determine the winner of our debate today, we actually are going to care less about who gets more votes, but actually who changes more minds. And in order to know how many minds are changed, we need to know what you think before the round starts. So what I'm going to ask you all to do is to cast your vote. There's going to be a few different ways you can vote, but before we talk about the voting, let me tell you what we're talking about today. The subject that the Fighting Smelt debate team has chosen is affirmative action does more harm than good. It's a juicy topic. It's a challenging topic. I think we're going to hear a lot of really interesting stuff today. If you don't know what affirmative action is, that's fine because there is an opportunity to vote. I'm unsure. So there are three different ways that you can vote. You can just simply scan that QR code. It'll take you somewhere where you can vote. You can go at the bottom to pollev.com/LCC Smelt 294, or you can text LCC Smelt 294 to the phone number 37607. What I'm asking you to do is to vote yes, no, or I'm unsure based on how you feel about this issue. Do you think yes, affirmative action does more harm than good? No, affirmative action does not do more harm than good. Or I'm unsure. And please be honest. Please be truthful. You don't need to pretend to be smarter than you are. It's okay to say that you're unsure. I'm not sure that I'm sure. So this is what we're asking people to do as we're getting started. Does this make sense? Does anyone have questions about? Oh, yeah, there are a lot more nuanced votes. There's no question. How so? Do you want a paper ballot? Hmm. I'll come find you after I've done some introductions and you can tell me how you want me to vote for you. Cool. Okay. I'll leave this up for just a little moment. Again, this is totally anonymous, so we're not like attaching your name to it. This isn't going to go on the record. We're not telling the Daily News how you voted about affirmative action. So let me talk a little bit about the team that you are about to see. My role here at LCC is my official title is Director of Forensics. That's a big fancy title that says I coach the speech and debate team. It's an incredible privilege to work with this group of special nerds. And really, there is a long legacy that dates back to the 1960s. I'm going to leave this up because it looks like some people are still working through the voting, but I can tell you some things that you're going to see on the next slide. The late 1960s was when this team was founded. We had a legendary coach for many decades, Mike Dugas, who really took this program and put it on the map. And I've been so fortunate to be at the helm for the last 9 years, working with people talking about responsible discourse in an era where I think that is really critical and important. This year's team included 15 students who competed at least one competitive speech and debate tournament, and that includes 9 people who represented our team at Phi Pi Nationals. That is the national championship tournament for community college speech and debate. Let's see. What I love about this year's team is there was so much interesting diversity. This team included international students and running start students and students who are full-time and students who are part-time and a range of ages. And we speak so many languages on the team. There's just so many interesting personalities that make this team what it is. In total, our team participated in 10 tournaments this year. We would have liked to go to more, but a couple were canceled. And I just added this up last night, and this always blows my mind when I do the tally at the end of the season. If you add up all of the people on our team collectively over the course of the season, dating back to September, the members of the LCC Fighting Smelt did 313 rounds of debate this year, which means that they spent a total of 136 hours just doing debate, just in competition. That doesn't include the prep time. That doesn't include practice rounds. And I can tell you, this is a group of practiceaholics. They really like to practice. They do a lot of debates outside of competition. So truly just appreciate how much time has gone into what you're going to see today. Let me go to this next slide and start properly talking about these folks. Um, so I want to just, in general, I believe that this activity is about more than just the wins, but also this team has won a lot. And so I want to just highlight a couple really impressive things that I think this group of students has done. It's not happening. There we go. Cool. So we compete in the Northwest Forensics Conference. This is all of the colleges and universities that do speech and debate in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Northern Utah, and Alaska. And we were the Division III conference champions, basically meaning best community college program in all of those states, which is really remarkable and such an honor. This team won the community college division at 6 different tournaments this year. I don't think any team I've ever coached has come close to that. It was just such a remarkable. We just got like desensitized to winning because we always did it. It was really really incredible. And just recently we received an award from IPDA, that's the International Public Debate Association, saying that this team was the 3rd best community college program theoretically in the world, but really in the United States over the course of the entire season. Um, and most recently, we came back from Phi Pi Nationals, which was held this year in Norfolk, Virginia. We took a group of 9 students to Norfolk, and we earned a team bronze award in debate. And that's a little complicated, but at the end of the day, these are the best of the best community college programs in the country. And to even place among the top, however many, is just a great honor. So these folks know what they're doing. Frankly, they intimidate me sometimes, which is why I'm going to try to fairly promptly turn over the microphone to our student debaters. Yes, great, 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 great. So we are going to see 4 debaters today. Those are the names that are a little bit more in bold. So we'll see Mara, Seamus, Amira, and Kita. I'll hype them up just a little bit more in a moment here. What we are going to see is a debate between the affirmative side and the negative side. The affirmative side is going to be defending the resolution, saying, yes, indeed, affirmative action does more harm than good. And then the negative side will be negating the resolution, saying, no, the opposite. So you'll be hearing from Mara, Seamus, Amira, and Kita, but I just wanted you to know that other students put hard work into this round. We basically have a small army of research assistants at the disposal of the folks who were preparing these cases. And just to pull back the curtain a little bit, when our students compete in rounds of debate, when they go to tournaments, every round they get a different topic. And every round, they only have 30 minutes to prepare for that topic. So we really do get used to relying on our teammates for support, to lifting each other up, providing our own unique areas of expertise to help fill the gaps that some people might have. So these are the teams of folks, but I'm just going to give a little bit more hype to the 4 debaters who you're going to be seeing. You're first going to hear from Mara Slabu, who looks like this. Mara joined our team at the ripe old age of 16 human years old, and Mara had success so quickly. It was really inspiring. She, over the course of the season, earned awards in 6 different competitive categories. I'm always so impressed when someone can have that broad range of success. And most recently was named a bronze medalist at Phi Pi in IPDA debate. That's going to be a common theme. Everyone you're going to be seeing is a Phi Pi Nationals medalist, people who placed at our national tournament. So that's Mara. Let's talk a little bit about Seamus. Seamus is returning to this stage for the 2nd time in 2 years, is the one carryover from our community conversations debate last spring. Seamus is our team captain. He lives and breathes debate, advanced to elimination rounds in IPDA debate 12 times over the course of his LCC career. Most people don't even go to 12 tournaments in their time at LCC, and Seamus has been in the elimination rounds that many times. Seamus is a national champion, Phi Pi gold medalist, and was named the 5th speaker at our national tournament in a field of 137 people. It's a stupid number. Seamus is very good at debate. Great. Let's introduce Maria Amira Devasha Vandola. Amira joined our team midway through the season, which is a really hard thing to do. It's hard to play catch up and learn this activity. It would be like joining the basketball team in the middle of their season. I don't know how you do it. And yet, Amira worked really hard, got caught up, had some success pretty early on, ultimately had success in three different events. And I actually think she's just getting started. She's going to have a crazy year next year. And she is also a national bronze medalist in IPDA debate. And finally, we have Kita Steen Glidden. Kita is also a team captain, has led by example in so many events for 2 entire years. Success across all of the genres of competition, from limited preparation events like impromptu and extemporaneous, to prepared speeches, to interpretive pieces like poetry and program oral interpretation, and yes, indeed, debate. Kita is also a national champion at FireOpi, a gold medalist in debate. So as you can hear, there's just so many accolades that are going to be on the stage, and that's incredible. Something that is very frustrating for me, but a great problem to have, is we actually have more national medalists on our team that we just can't fit on the stage today. So that's Mita. Mita is very good at debate too. Okay. Hey, it seems like you all already know how to knock. I was going to briefly say that in the debate world, we really love knocking on tables. That's our way of clapping. And you can actually do that without really disturbing the debate, even in the middle of debate. So if you hear someone say something that you think is cool, feel free to knock. And if you want to just like clap after speech is over, feel free to knock. But I think that's all that I wanted to say. And frankly, I've already talked too long. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our debaters. I think that means Mara.
Is everyone ready? And I'll start my time now. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for being here, our audience, our opponents, my partner. I'm super excited to have this debate. And today I stand in firm affirmation of our resolution. Affirmative action does more harm than good. Now, for a quick definition of affirmative action. This is practices and policies that favor individuals from certain groups regarded as disadvantaged in an effort to improve opportunities for underprivileged communities. So today in our round, we are valuing inclusivity. So this means that we should be looking at this debate through the lens of inclusivity. So if at the end of the day, you believe affirmative action is more harmful to inclusivity than beneficial, you should be voting yes on the resolution. If you believe the opposite, then you should be voting no. Now, looking at our first reason for why affirmative action is more harmful, this is because of discrimination. According to Williams' law, affirmative action is inherently a form of discrimination because it treats people differently based on things like their race, ethnicity, or gender. It favors individuals from certain groups, and this can be unfair to deserving and well-qualified people who just happen to be a part of the majority. This can cause feelings of resentment when people who are well-qualified just don't fit a specific identity that is required. In a 2023 Supreme Court case, the Supreme Court voted against race-based affirmative action in universities. They felt that it violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which prohibits racial discrimination. So we see that affirmative action is inherently a thing that is discriminatory. Inclusivity, which is our value for this round, should be about judging people's character, their capability, and their skill, not just the color of their skin or the country that they're from. Inclusivity should mean giving an equal opportunity to people regardless of their background. And of course, discrimination is a serious problem within our society, but it is not solved through more discrimination because this directly contradicts what inclusivity should mean. Now, looking at our second reason of limited benefits. Now, affirmative action really does nothing to end or improve discrimination in our society because discrimination is a systemic issue. It's something that disadvantaged populations face throughout their entire lives. So giving them a spot in a college or giving them a job at a company does nothing to ensure that they won't be discriminated against there, and it does nothing to ensure that they'll be successful within that spot. We see this supported by the Swedish Economic Policy Review, who explains that minority students brought in by affirmative action have lower grades and very high dropout rates. So there's really no significant benefit to disadvantaged communities when we're giving people from these communities simply a spot. We're not giving them the resources to succeed. We're not giving them the support they need. And inclusivity is not just setting students up for failure to meet a diversity goal. It's about giving everyone an equal opportunity for success. The Amherst student in 2023 also explains that affirmative action does not consider other circumstances like socioeconomic status. So this means that affirmative action overwhelmingly benefits middle and upper class members of disadvantaged communities, not the people who actually need it the most. So we see this in Harvard. In a study in 2018, they found that 71% of Harvard's Black and Latino students are from the top 10% of families. So what this means is if affirmative action is intended to help people who otherwise don't have a chance at finding success in life, then giving these opportunities to students who come from such rich families is not the best use of affirmative action. It's not giving them to students who actually need it and who have no other opportunities. It's giving them to people who might be able to have other opportunities otherwise. And even when it does offer spots to disadvantaged students, it's not ensuring that they will find success within those positions. Now, looking at our last reason of political divisiveness. According to the Washington Post in 2023, they sent out a survey that essentially asked if race and ethnicity should be a factor in hiring, promotions, or college admissions, or if it should be strictly based on merit and qualifications. 92% of respondents said that it should be strictly based on merit and qualifications. And 86% of Black respondents said the same thing. We also see statistics from the Pew Research Center, Cato Institute, and City Journal all supporting the idea that the majority of the population does not support affirmative action. The United Nations University in 2024 explains that this has been a deeply controversial issue for a really long time, so it is inherently something that is causing division among our society. Inclusivity should be about unity, not about division. And we see that affirmative action is inherently discriminatory. It is not providing students with the benefits that they deserve. It's not providing equal opportunities at success, and it is allowing for political division within our society. And for all of these reasons, affirmative action most definitely does more harm than it does good. Thank you. Hello?
Okay, can you hear me? Alrighty, that was a lovely first speech. I just have a few clarifying questions. The first one is going to be, what was the date for your source regarding what percentage of Black and Latinas were from rich families of Harvard University?
This was the Harvard Independent in 2018.
2019. Awesome. And when we are talking about, oh, give me one second. You made the claim that affirmative action is only race-based. Do you believe this is true, or do you have any sources stating this?
I don't believe I made that claim. Affirmative action can be about more things than just race.
Awesome.
The most common might be race, but it's not just race-based.
Perfect. And then talking about the Black and Latina students in Harvard University, isn't a large portion of Harvard University a common critique of this is actually that they are legacy students, meaning essentially they are getting in because a family member or somebody they know got into Harvard University.
Sure, but I think affirmative action should be intended to help disadvantaged students, even if it's at a prestigious university.
Okay, and do you know what entails affirmative action?
Can you clarify your question?
Is affirmative action just an admission decision?
Like for college?
Yes.
No, it can be indifferent. It can be like hiring or college admissions. It can be
Awesome.
different things.
And are you aware that it also includes financial support for students?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Awesome. And then going on to the Supreme Court case where we are talking about racial discrimination, just to clarify, you did say that affirmative action focuses on more things than just race. Is that correct?
It can focus on more things. The most common is race-based, though, and that was the
Awesome.
Supreme Court case.
And that was particularly a case against Harvard University and a group that was called, I believe it was something along the lines of equality for student admissions. It was against Harvard University,
It was
correct?
for Harvard and University of North Carolina, and they banned it for all universities.
Okay, thank you.
everyone. As this is my first time being able to speak, I just like to say thank you for everyone coming here today. This is a really great opportunity to show you guys what debate is, and we stand in firm negation of today's resolution that affirmative action does more harm than good. We agree with the affirmatives part of how they believe that this is a value round, with the value being inclusivity, but we do have our own definition we would like to provide, and the definition would be affirmative action. We would like to define this as affirmative action in the US is the active effort to improve employment, educational, and other opportunities for members of groups that have been subject to discrimination. I would really like to inform the audience that affirmative action is more than just race. It's about social economic status, sexuality, gender, and for first generational college students, and their whole point is they like to support these people, and one of these ways is by giving them financial aid. I'll be first going over into our case, and we do have two contentions, the first one being direct comparison and the second one being benefits. And after we go over our case, I'll be going into the affirmatives case. In our first contention, direct comparison, we see this study from Cambridge University in 2024 where they basically sent out the same exact resumes where they had the same qualifications, but in these resumes, there were different kinds of names that were stereotypically made for a black man and names that are stereotypically known for white women. And we saw that even though that these resumes had the same statistics on these resumes, the names that seemed like they were from a black man had a 72% less likely chance of getting this job. So we can, and for white women, they had a 32% less chance of getting this job simply based off their race. So we can see that this is a real issue where race is often used against these people in work environments and honestly in educational environments as well. So this is a big problem that affirmative action is trying to solve. Now, moving on into the next source from NAACP, after affirmative action got banned in the University of Michigan, they noticed that the enrollment for Black and Native American students dropped down by 90%. So we can see that affirmative action does this great job of creating an inclusive environment in these schools, because we can see that after affirmative action ended, the enrollment rates for Black and Native American students dropped down by 90%. And so affirmative action is actually going directly into the value of today's round, which is inclusivity. It's creating these inclusive environments in school and work environments by increasing the amount of diverse people that are in these situations. Now, moving on into the next contention, which is benefits. According to the United Nations in 2024, 63% of affirmative action people have served to improve outcomes for minority populations. And this can look like increased access to education and career advancement. So we can see that 63% of the people that have been affected by affirmative action, this is benefiting them. It is actually doing more good than harm in these cases. And therefore, creating a more inclusive environment, again, because this is helping those people who are minorities get into these situations that will help them better on in life. And then we can also see from in Harvard University in 2025, they state that Black students are actually more likely to get higher degrees and succeed when affirmative action aids them. This can look like aiding them to get into these programs and aiding them by financial aid. So again, we can see that affirmative action does do more good than harm, and especially creates a more inclusive environment in these communities by letting these people who are, again, minorities into places that they would often maybe not get into, as we heard in the first statistic by Cambridge University. And another source from Sage Journal, they state that less diverse workplaces give minorities a 35% higher chance of being hate crimed, because they're not inclusive environments, they're not diverse environments, and affirmative action actually creates these inclusive environments, therefore not even making it more inclusive, but making it just a safer place for these people to work and go to school in. Therefore, affirmative action actually just does do more good than harm. Now, moving on into the opponent's case, in their first contention, they mentioned the Supreme Court case where they specifically state that race-based affirmative action is bad. And this is true, but as I stated in the beginning of my speech, that affirmative action is not only based off race. This is wrong. We should not just be basing it off race. We should be basing it off people's social economic status, sexuality, gender, and merit. And again, so in the Supreme Court, and Stanford actually agrees with this, they state that it should not just be from race. Then they also mention in their first contention that affirmative action does nothing to ensure that these people will not be discriminated and that they will eventually succeed. But as we heard in my second contention from Harvard University, that Black students are actually more likely to succeed and get higher degrees when affirmative action aids them. So this actually goes directly against that. And we also have another source from American Education that says graduation rates increase when affirmative action aids these individuals. So we can see that this actually does ensure that they will succeed. And then going to the fact that they will not get discriminated, I'm sure it is safe to assume that when there are more groups of people who are more like them, they have a safe space than if there was only just one individual from that certain group. Now, moving on into their second contention, they mentioned how 71% of Harvard Black and Latino students come from rich families. Well, so does majority of people from Harvard. So just I don't see how this is just a non-unique argument. As stated from Statistica, 36% of Harvard students are legacies, meaning they come from people who have money. They already went to Harvard. Therefore, this is a non-unique argument. And then in their third contention, they mentioned how people don't believe it should be based on merit, and I mean it should be strictly based on merit, but this is just not the reality. Thank you.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Let's turn that timer now. All right, that was a fantastic speech. I just have a couple of questions for you. So starting off, when you were talking about the affirmative second contention, you mentioned that the graduation rates increased. How much did they increase by?
There was no exact statistic.
Okay, what were they looking at in that study? Which schools? How many schools?
Well, in Harvard University, there was a statistic from Harvard University, so I'm assuming Harvard or other Ivy League colleges.
Okay, so it was looking just at Harvard?
I'm assuming.
Okay, thank you. And then in your second contention, what was your first source that you cited?
United Nations from 2024.
Okay, and can you go ahead and briefly restate what the claim they made was?
63% of students that, or not students, people that are affected by affirmative action, it has served to improve outcomes for minority populations by increasing access to education and also increasing access to career advancement.
Okay, did it speak anything to the significance of that benefit they received, or is that just 63% received any level of benefit whatsoever?
No, but I believe that access to education and career advancement is a huge benefit.
Okay. How successful are people who get into university with affirmative action?
Well, according to American Education, graduation rates are higher for people part of affirmative action because they get help, they get more aid. So I'm assuming, I don't know, it's higher.
Okay, and is that specifically looking at financial aid, or is that just looking at if some?
That's just graduation rates in general that are from people affected by affirmative action that use affirmative action aid.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And then just to clarify, what was your definition that you wanted to bring in from affirmative action?
Affirmative action in the U.S. is the active effort to improve employment, education, and other opportunities for members of groups that have been subjected to discrimination.
Okay. Did you disagree with the definition that we brought forth?
No, I think it's great, but I also think that this is an educational debate, and I would like to give an audience a different perspective of what affirmative action can look like.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you so much. All right, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, I'll go ahead and start that timer now. As is my first opportunity to speak, I'd like to start off by saying thank you to you all for being here. I really enjoy being able to do debates, and being able to have an audience is fantastic. Thank you to my teammate and to my opponents for being here today as well. With that, I'll just go ahead and get straight into it. Firstly, I'm going to go off of what the negation said in their last speech, and then I'm going to defend the case in which the affirmative made initially. Firstly, to go over the definition they brought forth, I can't agree to the definition, but I really want to clarify for you what we're looking at when we're looking at affirmative action. What we're looking at with affirmative action is policies in which are favoring specific individuals. What they said is an active effort to improve opportunities for students in which have been discriminated against, but I really want to stress that it's an active effort being put in place there. It's not just something which is going to be an overall benefit to students. It's not going to be something which is anti-discrimination policy generally, but specifically a benefit given to specific groups of students. With that, I'll go ahead and move on into their first contention of direct comparison. And this, my opponent firstly talked about from Cambridge, in which they found that when names were removed from resumes, they found that they had higher chances for marginalized groups to be able to receive jobs. However, I want to stress here that's not relating to affirmative action. What this source is showing here is just that discrimination happens. Affirmative action would be giving benefits to minority populations or discriminating against groups, whereas this is removing an opportunity for discrimination by removing a name from a resume, and thus it's not relating to affirmative action being present or whether it does more harm than good. This is merely stating that discrimination exists. Next, my opponent talked about in the University of Michigan, in which they found that when affirmative action was removed due to court cases, they saw a 90% decrease in enrollment from Black and Native students. However, I want to talk about how this is something in which, firstly, the drop in which they saw at the University of Michigan was going from 8.9% to a 5% enrollment rate, in which is a significant amount, but that's not necessarily a massive shift as their statistic suggests that it would be. Additionally, this is something which is correlated with the change that happened. It's not showing that it was caused by the removal of affirmative action. My opponent did not show how this is something which happened because affirmative action was removed, just saying that when it was removed, this also happened. A lot of changes can happen that will alter how many students are in higher education, whether they are in a discriminated group or not, and just showing that the amount of students who are enrolled dropped correlated with something else does not necessarily show a benefit of affirmative action. Next, going into the attacks they made on the affirmations case with their first contention of discrimination. And here they talked firstly about how it's a violation of the 14th Amendment, and they agree that it's bad, but there's other things other than just race-based discrimination that affirmative action takes place in. What we're looking at in today's debate is how affirmative action is taking an effect in the real world. We're not looking at what it could be, but what it is. And what it is right now, primarily, is things such as quotas, is things such as financial aid going to specific groups of students. So while it could also take into account socioeconomic status in the future, that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at right now, does affirmative action do more harm than good for inclusivity? And we can see that it is doing more harm. The way in which it's being implemented has required the Supreme Court to step in to say that this is a problem. We can clearly see this isn't good for inclusivity because it's violating the laws that are designed to support equal rights for people. And on this, my opponent's only statement is that it could be better in the future, but it's not right now. Right now, affirmative action does more harm than good. On the second contention, my opponent firstly cross-applied their contention. They said that they said stuff related previously, in which we were talking about the limited benefits. They state that there are benefits and how 63% of people who received affirmative action got some level of benefit. Firstly, I want to stress that 63%, well, it's the majority, means that a large amount of people, I believe that would be 37%, received no benefits whatsoever from affirmative action, which is very sad that they're receiving affirmative action and there's no benefits that exist whatsoever. This is just showing that a lot of people received some level of benefit. Did it allow them to succeed? My opponent didn't show that. It just had some level of benefit for them. Additionally, we should be keeping in mind the fact that those who are receiving this is groups in which are already set in a place in which they can succeed. As we mentioned in our first speech, looking at Harvard, with 71% of students who are receiving aid from affirmative action being in the top 10% already, they're already having the grounds they need to succeed. The reason you get college degrees, the reason you excel in your education is in order to be able to have a successful future, which these people are already almost guaranteed by being in these rich families. And on the third contention of political divisiveness, my opponent didn't say anything on this, and thus we should believe that there's no strong arguments against how affirmative action is a politically divisive issue in which goes against inclusivity.
Alrighty. Everyone ready? Awesome. All right, as this is my first and last time speaking, I'd like to thank everybody here. Thank you so much for showing up. This has been great. I'm really excited to see such the community support that has shown up today. So today I'm going to first go over I'm going to go over attacks based on our case, then go over negations case, then we're going to go over something called voters or reasons why you guys should feel comfortable voting for negation. First, going on over our case. On the direct comparison, my opponent had this attack essentially saying with the Cambridge talking about that 72% of Black men were less likely to get callbacks and that 32% of white women were less likely to get callbacks when they submitted the same resume to a office. This is actually proof that the whole merit system isn't working because there's a racial bias. There's a bias against genders. Essentially, when people hear a Black sounding name or a feminine sounding name, as we saw from the study, they were less likely to get employment opportunities. And this is why we need affirmative action, which is so much more than just admissions. It's things like providing financial aid and scholarships, but also creating cultural training for workplaces and schools to be able to be culturally competent and understand such things such as race, socioeconomic status. Going on to talking about how we discussed how Native American and Black population dropped by 90% in University of Michigan after affirmative action stopped. The reality is that it was the removal of affirmative action. This study specifically followed the effect of removing affirmative action. And my opponent said that there's still a massive portion and not a massive shift. 90% is a significant shift. So what if they were a minority on campus? The reality is that that minority shrunk by 90% because of the removal of these supports that are come from affirmative action. Going on to the United Nations, where we talked about how 63% had significantly, and I apologize in cross-examination as my opponent or my teammate kind of got a little confused, but while there wasn't direct statistics, it said significantly, meaning this was like career-altering things that affirmative action helped with. It allowed people access a foot into the door of education, but it gave them an opportunity to succeed. And 63% is bigger than zero. And the reality is, if affirmative action wasn't there, 63% of those people would be not be as successful. Going into Harvard University, which wasn't addressed, where they talked about that Black students were more likely to get degrees and succeed than with affirmative action than those who didn't have affirmative action. So clearly we can see that it is benefiting. It is allowing people to further education and get their foot into the door for greater opportunities. Going into the tax made on my opponent's case. So my opponent first goes into the Supreme Court ruling. I'd like to clarify that the Supreme Court ruling against Harvard and admissions was actually focused on stating that race only as affirmative action isn't politically correct. It isn't okay to do that. And as the Harvard Crimson, which is Harvard's own newspaper, reported that in 1996 or 1976, that Harvard explicitly said that their affirmative action plan was going to diversify the student body by exclusively focusing on race as a factor, meaning that they weren't taking into account gender, they weren't taking into account socioeconomic factors. And this is something that Harvard's own school just admitted and was found in the Supreme Court ruling. So to say that affirmative action isn't effective is essentially saying that apparently because Supreme Court doesn't find race, which is a small portion of affirmative action, and found that race discrimination is unconstitutional, yeah, that's correct. But the reality is affirmative action is so much more than that. It is giving people a leg into the door. It is providing financial aid for people. It is providing opportunities for employment and cultural awareness on campuses and workplaces. Going into limited benefits, my opponent brings up this idea that it doesn't address systemic issues. The reality is that currently this is one of the only policies in place, one of the only things we can discuss. The idea of a holistic approach like affirmative action states is something to take into account to the fact that some people do have disadvantages in life. Some people don't have a lot of money and financial backing, and that shouldn't deny them opportunity for higher education. It means that people who have been racially discriminated, it means the 72% of Black men who would not get called back because their name sounds Black, It's eliminating that, is creating cultural awareness and shifting the narrative to include everyone, which is our weighing mechanism of today. It's creating inclusivity by asking people to be more mindful, providing backing for people who have been historically discriminated against. Going into talking about how it doesn't take into account fact, and they also go on to talk about how the Black and Latina and Harvard University essentially didn't, were all rich kids apparently. This is something that is, as we saw from the statistic, that 36% of Harvard University students were legacy students. Harvard is a school for a lot of people with financial backing, but they are making efforts. And the fact that they did admit themselves that that was their focus of race instead of the other factors is a clear indicator. And the last one about merit and quality, we can cross-apply to this, to the fact that with our first study talking about the 72% of Black men who are less likely to get jobs. This is an example of how the idea of merit often leads to discrimination. Thank you.
Okay, is everybody ready? I'll start my time now. First of all, this is my last opportunity to speak, so I'd like to extend another round of thank you to our audience for being here and our opponents and my wonderful teammate. This has been a wonderful debate to debate. So I'd like to use this speech to get into some last reasons why everyone here should feel more than comfortable siding with the affirmation on this resolution. So first of all, I want to talk about our third contention in our case, which our opponents have not addressed, and this is that of political division. So when we value inclusivity in this round, we see that affirmative action is an issue that just by existing and just by being put into place has caused so much division in our society. And that directly contradicts the idea of inclusivity. And again, my opponents have said absolutely nothing about this. But I think a more important thing to address here is the benefits of affirmative action. My opponents have claimed that there are benefits to, they brought up this statistic of 63% of people who are affected by affirmative action receive some benefit. First of all, this means that 30% of people receive no benefit whatsoever, and that's a pretty large number. But again, when we say that 63% of people receive some benefit, this could be people that we see, like at Harvard, if they're already from a family that is well off, we can't attribute their success just to affirmative action. These are students and people who might have been able to succeed either way. So it's not a benefit that is directly linked to affirmative action. Furthermore, my opponent's statistics show no consistent proof that what type of benefit it is or how significant this benefit is. We clearly see in our case that because it provides them, it doesn't really provide support or the opportunity for them to succeed within affirmative action. It makes logical sense that they're not going to get a significant benefit from affirmative action. And my opponents also mentioned that there are no other policies that provide us with like anti-discrimination things, but they have literally stated, they gave an example, taking names off of resumes. Why don't we do stuff like that? Affirmative action is not the only way we can face discrimination, and it is obviously a harmful way. So audience, at the end of this round, I want you to remember you are not voting on the idea of affirmative action. You're voting on the reality of affirmative action. And more often than not, affirmative action is not about socioeconomic status. The most common type of affirmative action is race-based, as we have shown in our case. So don't vote based on what you think affirmative action could be or the benefits it could have. Vote on what you believe affirmative action currently does. And we see in our case, affirmative action is inherently discriminatory. Affirmative action does not significantly benefit the people it is intended to help. And affirmative action is an issue that has caused so much division within our society. So clearly, there are many more harms to affirmative actions than there are benefits. And for this reason, you should be voting yes on today's resolution. Thank you.
All right, friends, our time is short. The most important thing to me is that we can determine a winner. It's all about winning. with this group who loves their trophies. So I'm going to once more ask you to repeat that voting process. It's the same. So scan the QR code, go to pollev.com/LCC Smelt 294, or do the text thing, text an A, B, or C. I will briefly report on what happened before the debate. Before the debate, the most common response was unsure. We had 45% of people responding unsure. But then of the people who did have a perspective, people were decidedly more in favor of, I guess, the negation perspective. 41% of people answered no before the debate, and 14% of people answered yes before the debate. So we'll see how that shakes out in the end. I'm just going to say a couple of quick things as we wind this down, try to wrap this up in the next couple of minutes, and then hopefully some of us can hang out afterwards and answer some questions if people have them. One of the great, I'm going to say, privileges of coaching at a 2-year program is we get to do things like help our students earn competitive scholarships to go to other colleges and do this some more. So I am so, in air quotes, excited that Keita and Seamus will be competing against us next year for Lewis and Clark College and Oregon State University. It is really remarkable to see this end product of people who have been doing this very consistently and at a very high level for years. And to imagine that there's actually room for more growth beyond this is really, really exciting. So let me just say a couple more things. Hopefully we've had an opportunity to figure out the voting system. If you are interested in our team and you want to learn more, a few things that you can do. You can follow us on social media. We're on Instagram at Fighting Smelt Forensics. If you just go on Facebook and search Fighting Smelt, we're the one. You can certainly get in touch with me. This is my email address. I know a lot of y'all in the room know me. You're maybe my students currently or my coworkers currently, but I love talking about this team. Happy to set up some time to talk more about it. For students in the room, if you're interested in getting involved, maybe competing next year, let's set up a meeting to talk about what that would look like. We're always looking for more folks. And then finally, we do have a web page on the LCC website. It's on the student life page, clubs and orgs, speech and debate team. And that is just has some basic information about when we meet and how this thing operates. Our season is over. We've been lamenting that this event is kind of our last official thing of the year. And our team is still going to be meeting, but really we're going to be looking forward to next year. So this is kind of the conclusion of the 2024-2025 Fighting Smelt season, a season that has been really special. Thanks y'all for coming out and sharing this with us. Just because I think we're basically out of time, I'm going to tell you the end results. We still have 9% of people who are unsure, which is great. We reduced the uncertainty from 45% to 9%, which makes me a happy coach. But and actually then neither side had a majority opinion. Nobody has an outright victory. No one has won more than 50% of the audience. However, with a final 48% of the vote compared to their original 14%, I'm going to say that the, by a hair, winner of this round is the affirmation. Congratulations, Seamus and Mara. Okay, bye-bye. Oh, did you say some more, facilitator? Great. Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you all for coming out, and please come again next week.